And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel, and this is not Gloomhaven. I figured I would start with that. Honestly, the game's called Founders of Gloomhaven, and it's really tiny there, right? Founders of Gloomhaven. But in the title of this video, it's the same font thing, and so people are gonna be like, ooh, is this a sequel to Gloomhaven? Is it, what is it? Well, it is a Euro-style game, a tile placement game that is set in the land, or the city, of Gloomhaven, from the big #1 game of all time, Gloomhaven. But I would say they couldn't be more different, but they really are quite different. This one is a tile-laying game where you're connecting things on a board and building a city and trying to get points. And Gloomhaven's a dungeon crawl, So they're very different games. I want to point that out. So I also want people to know that I came in this game with those expectations. I didn't come in here thinking, ooh, I love Gloomhaven, so I like this. In fact, Isaac's first Euro game I thought was a little overwrought and wasn't as big of a fan of that one. So I kind of went into this one saying, okay, let's see how it works. Well, let's see how it works. Okay, I want you to realize I'm not going to explain every fine rule of this game. I just want to kind of give you an overlook at the game so you can see a little bit of how it works. Each player is going to pick a race in the game, and so these are the different races that are actually in the fantasy world of Gloomhaven. You have human and different groups here that you can be, and each group comes with a very specific color, and they also come with a resource they control. And so here we have iron here. That's one of this is a resource that the Valrath control. And then you're going to be drafting cards from the ones that no one has taken. So then they also have gems. So you're going to have two different resources that you control. But them having gems means that the race that does collect gems is not in this game. Now this game is about building the city of Gloomhaven, and you're going to have your most basic buildings that you'll be playing one on the board at the beginning of the game, and you'll be able to be putting other ones out on the board. But to build buildings, you're going to be following a bit like this tech tree here. So for example, if I want to build this building here, all right, this building is listed right here. This building is going to need one of these two resources, which shows the line on them. It also shows them here on the card. And they're going to need to be adjacent to it, which could be diagonally on the board or connected to it via roads. And then this building can be built. And so there's like a bit of a tech tree here where you're going to be putting cubes on something if you're the person who owns it. And so I own iron and gems, like I said at the beginning of the game, but then anyone else who, as the game progresses, gets access to that, they also have a building, or they purchase access to a building so that they can use that resource. They will also be putting cubes on these like this here. This is the board itself where you'll be keeping track of your points. The board is going to be split into 3 different sections. There's actually 2 sides of the board. This is the other side here where there's 3 different sections. There can only be 1 building of each type per section, which is why there's only 3 of each of the basic buildings. Although, as the game goes by, you will be able to build bridges to cross the rivers, and if you're on the wall side, you can also build kind of a way to cross the wall, a gate to cross the wall too. Although essentially it's the same as the river, it's just an aesthetic difference. The game revolves around a set of cards that players are going to have. You're going to have 5 cards, or if you're playing a 2-player game, you'll have a 6th card. And on your turn, you're going to be playing one of these cards. Now, when you play the card, you will do the main part. Each other player can follow and do the other part, or they can follow with one of these very basic actions. You can also play one of your cards as a basic action, which is just to get a voting gem, to put out a street on the board, to get some money, or to put one of your available workers onto a spot that allows them to do something. But usually you're going to, I shouldn't say usually, but often you're going to want to play one of these main things. So here, for example, Construct is going to let you build a building, and you get to build it for 1 less money than you normally would build it. These are personal buildings that you can put out here, like the bridges I already showed you, or the gates in the wall. Upgrade lets you build those advanced resources and a connected road. while the people who follow can just build an advanced resource building. Trading is basically how you're going to get your main things on the board, or to put your you're going to be able to get resources that other people already control. Recruiting is going to give you more cards. Everyone starts with basic cards, and that's great, but you can get these cards, which are essentially better versions. Like, this is a recruit card, this is an upgrade card, this is a trade card. They're better versions that you get, and you'll be able to play these. So when you recruit, you're going to have to pay money for these cards to get them, but once you add them, you'll be able to add them directly to your hand, which allows you to have more cards, because you can't, once you play a card, it stays in front of you till you play a call to vote, which will get your cards back. So these cards get better, and as you go through this pile, they will get better and better. Some of the ones at the bottom are fantastically useful. So for example, the paver here is another upgrade. So this lets you build an advanced resource building and a connected road. This will let you do it with 2 roads. And so to get these cards, though, you need to have control of a specific building, which it will show in the bottom of the card. Now, one of the main things you're doing over the course of this game is you're trying to score points, and you're doing that often by building these upgraded resource buildings. So when you build them, then you need to have access to the different resources that are there. Now, as the game goes by, you're going to have access. So here, for example, blue owns this one because they're on top. Yellow has access to it. They have a cube underneath it. So yellow would be able to build a building next to that, as long as they're connected to these 2 things that they need. This needs iron and writing. It's connected to them by roads. There's some other other placement rules, and honestly, I'm not going to get into all that here. There's a lot of rules, and that's one of the biggest complexity of the game on how to place things. But I want to just talk about when you place things like this, and they cost money to place them, but then you're going to be giving a point to the people who own each of those. And now that I have those set up, I can build this building here, because this building needs to be hooked up to cattle, and it needs to be hooked up to the machinery tile. And if I can place that, it's going to give 1 point to the person who owns the cattle and 4 points to the person who owns the machinery tile. However, when that happens, the person who owns the machinery tile gets 4 points, but they have to give 2 of those points away to the tiles that support them. So there's a bit of cascading effect as you build these buildings. Not just that, but remember I said one of the cards was a call to vote. This is the card that you have to get stuff back in your hand. Now, call to vote is handy because it's going to give players income. They're going to be the number of different buildings that you have built and stuff, or different buildings are going to be giving you income. And so that's one of the reasons when you call vote, everyone else is going to get income, and then you get to reset your cards, put your workers back. And you might get some bonuses when you do a call to vote, but there's also a call to vote. Everyone is going to be voting using these little crystals that come with the game. These tokens, which are influenced, there's crystal ones which are fleeting and red ones which are lasting, which means whenever there's a vote, you have to do all your fleeting. Lastings you can decide to or not. So you're going to bid with one of these as well as with one of these tokens that matches the 3 available buildings for people to vote. And so the buildings that are here, whichever one gets the most votes, that's the building that's going to be built. Now, these buildings are big buildings. They're very unique buildings. So, for example, here's a soldier's garrison. When this one is built, it's going to be placed on the board. And there might be some restrictions to where they're placed. Sometimes they need to be placed in a very specific place. And then, if you can connect these resources to those buildings, you're going to get points. So if I can connect that one to this, I'm going to get 3, this one 5, this one 7. And again, with the cascading effects of people who support those resources. So you're going to want to connect these through roads and things. And as they're connected, you're placing cubes on these cards to show that they've been connected. And when a certain number of buildings are completely connected, that signals the end of the game. But when you build these buildings, they're also going to flip over, and it gives you kind of a worker placement aspect to the game now, where players are going to be able to place workers, and it will allow them to do a special action. You're going to be getting those workers by building your own personal houses. That's one of your own buildings that you can build. And when you do that, you will then have access to up to 3 of these guys who you can place in various places on those buildings that have been built to do those different actions. Players also have their own special ability that is on their tile, and you can place one of your workers there. So all their players pay you 1 for each claim token they have on resource tiles you own. That's because these guys charge for that. Or the Inox here pay access to any resource tile connected to a livestock tile for $2. So they can get access easier than other people. So I know that everything I just showed you sounds somewhat complex, and it all comes together though. It's all going to be about building these buildings. You see here a little group of buildings, but as the game goes by, that group is going to grow, and you're going to have buildings all over the board in various interconnected ways. And you're going to be trying to score points, and then once the last building is built, whoever has the most points is the winner of the game. I really like the artwork here. You know, it's the same artwork from Gloomhaven, but I do like this world, this background. It's not your typical elves and goblins and dwarves and things. And so while that doesn't really pertain to the game, I like that it's there. I like that background theming. And I like these buildings too, from the top down. All the different building shapes look really cool, and I'll give them props that it's fairly easy to tell the symbols apart on here. And so as you build this, the whole town is going to have a really good look to it. The piece colors are fine. You'll notice that each of the meeples has some little black lines on it to help differentiate between them. They're basic cubes and guys. The only complaint I would have here is that two of the colors, the purple and this other pinkish color, we found looked very similar to each other when placed on the board. But other than that, the cards, the coins are okay. I would prefer, I guess, well, I can't ask for metal coins in every game, but they're just okay. But everything else looks really good. It's not a hard game. Maybe my biggest complaint would be this board here. I found that this board was not the easiest board to follow. Yes, when I look at it, I can go, this needs this, and this. This needs this, and this resource down here. But just glancing at this board, especially when there's cubes all over it, it's kind of like, wait, what needs what? I mean, it's not the hardest thing, but it's a little more confusing than I would prefer it to be. Other than that, though, great components. I'm a little nervous when I talk about this because this game is a heavy game. Now, honestly, the rules are not that complex overall. I would argue that the rules about placement, I mean, we looked at those rules probably, every game I was in, we were constantly, okay, I can place this here. It can be next to one of my buildings, but it has to be, no, it can't be next to one of my buildings, but it can be next to someone else's building, but they have to be connected by roads, and let's follow the roads, and these connect, and now we just connected this, and so what happens here? And sometimes you'll connect things in multiple sources will connect to the same building, especially once you build the bridges across the river. Then the person who connects them decides. And so there's, again, that whole where do things go? I felt like it was more complex, and I wouldn't have minded like a little player guide that says how to place things. Bloop, 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 bloop. Because by far that's the biggest asked question in this game, how to do that. Now the game uses some mechanisms that I love. I love having a card in your hand, you play it, everyone else gets to follow. This is from Glory to Rome and other games like that. That's a tried and true mechanism, and the fact that you can buy upgrades and better cards and they get really good as time goes by, that's good. And that actually may be, I won't say it's my favorite part of the game, but I really like it because no matter what someone does in their turn, you're a little interested because you might be involved and do that action too, even if it's just to take some basic thing or to take some money. That is a really cool thing. Placing things down and have them connect to each other, I like that too. Like I said, it's easily the most confusing part of the game, and even the scoring can be confusing. So if I play this building, I get 8 points, but I need to give 4 to you, and then you give 1 to him and 1 back to me. There's some, as you move the score, we're like, okay, you score, then we move you back. And again, that feels like that kind of clogs up the system a bit, that whole, how do you play stuff? How do you score when we do play stuff? But the rest of the game, it's hard to explain. It's a game that on the outset looks super complicated. And then you're like, no, it's not. But yet part of it's feel that complexity to them. And I'm not sure I'm at any point where I would know how to win this game. Now I think I might like the game slightly better with 2 than with 4, because with 2 there's some neutral resources that are out there, so you're trying to get access to them. And it's really intriguing because you start with a couple resources and you need to sit there and go, okay, I need to build back from these. But voting is so critical in this game. Like mind-blowingly critical, because if you pick the building that comes out, you pick the points that are going to come out. That building needs my resources that I have and gets things. I really want that too, but if I waste all my time getting influence to vote with, then I'm not really building either. And so you're struggling, I want to do everything, and you can't. Again, you're building up your hand. That's a neat aspect. You're going to be forced to call for a vote several times over the course of the game. The game kind of spirals pretty quickly to an end. For a while, you're like, man, we need to get 6 of these buildings done, and we haven't even done one of them yet. And all of a sudden, boom, 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 the game can just go boom, and end like that. And I wish the ending was a little bit better. It almost felt like it was like, boom, done. And you're like, oh, great, because the game has gone on long enough at that point anyway. So it feels like a good length to the game, but whew. Now the fantasy theme is fine. I don't mind it. Like I said, it's not generic. It's interesting. It's not going to really come out in the gameplay. This gameplay is fairly abstract as you connect things on the board. And this is definitely not going to be everyone's game. It has a pile of mechanisms in it, and you can see those mechanisms peeking through. You know, I can see placing the tiles, and it's a really thinky game. There's going to be a lot of moments where you're sitting there going, I could put this tile here. If I put that there, I might be setting him up for this. Money is tight in the game, so you're always struggling, and okay, I got to be careful. I want to get some more money, but I'm going to spend money on this and that, and I want to build this house, and you got to be really careful not to build yourself into a corner where your resources aren't going out. It's intriguing, so I like it. I don't love it. I think the game is good. It's probably a little longer than I would want to play a game of this type. I'm not sure how many people will continually want to play this with me because you are constantly kind of wrapping your mind around things. But I found that I found that to be an intriguing, interesting experience. To say, okay, how do I put these down here and connecting roads? And it was neat. It kind of like hit my brain, and also the tech tree type stuff. Not really a tech tree, but if I do this in my second game, I played very differently than my first one because I was like, now I see the end picture. And I think that's a big deal here because that end picture, that as you place things out, you have to sit there and go, okay, how am I getting to this? And it's easier to work backwards and say, this building is going to get points. And this one is on one of those 3 things that we're voting for. And I need to be prepared for that vote. So I'm going to get some voting here. I want to get some more of my workers to place that. Man, there's so many choices in this game. But at the same time, you don't have to think about them all the time. Like, hey, you're building a building. Should I build a building? Nah, I better get some money. Okay, hey, you're taking a card. Should I take a card? Yeah, I need a new card. You know, and there's that constantly, you're just going off other people's actions, and it comes to your turn. I want to do this action. Oh, wait, I already played that card. So do I pick my cards up by calling a vote? But I don't want to call a vote at this point in time. And so even though there's 5 cards, and there's thousands and thousands of different variations. And like I said, it's neat to watch the city build up and go out. I'm not sure this game will be considered a classic. I think that a lot of people are going to go into looking for Gloomhaven, and it's not there. I think some people are going to find it a little too long and thinky, and some people will be thrown off by that. Even though I know some people might say that placing tiles is very straightforward. I haven't found that in my experience. But in that, I see some unique, interesting things. When you place a building, you get points, and then it trickles down to other people. That's a pretty cool concept. So I like it. It's different than other things that I've played before, and it makes me think harder than a lot of other games do. But sometimes that's a good thing. Dice Tower Judgment approved.